Wonderful, great. Well, thank you, Len, for that great presentation. You raised some really great points, and I'll address some of them that I think resonate a lot with what I'm working with at Passion to Plant. One of the things you mentioned was church plants as evangelism laboratories. And while I think that is wonderful to have church planters really experiment, I believe that one of the things that we see on the ground is that still in the church planting spaces, the success stories are the ones that are elevated. And labs are created for ideation and experimentation. But if you're always lifting up the success stories, you're basically telling church planters don't fail. And if you're telling them not to fail, then the lab is really a lie, because they're not going to do the things that the new wine that is permeating within them, they're not going to be able to do it because they're going to be afraid to fail. When it comes to church planting as evangelism, which is the main theme of this discussion, I agree that it's the most effective way of introducing the gospel to people. New churches are the best ones that reach new generations and new residents and new people groups. But I don't necessarily agree that we should see evangelism as the sole reason for church planting. Many associate church planting with evangelism and sending teams from one place to another. But I think that while evangelism is crucial, church planting is not solely the reason. It encompasses everything a church is called to do, including discipleship. And by the looks of what is happening around the country, we can see that discipleship has been a main reason for the things that we're seeing. And basically what I'm saying is not good discipleship. We have seen an intertwining of Christianity with nationalism, and churches seem to have missed that memo that it should have been about reaching new people groups and sharing the gospel. But if we had a better discipleship, especially in church plants, I believe that we would not be where we are now. The Apostle Paul's church planting efforts, of course, included evangelism, but it also included discipleship and leadership development. Also, capitalism has come into our church planting endeavors, kind of mirroring and blurring a little of the intentionality behind evangelism. Since there was a need for businesses to be started, people started, making church planting a business. Someone once said, the gospel came to the Greeks and the Greeks turned it into philosophy. The gospel came to the Romans and the Romans turned it into a system. The gospel came to the Europeans and the Europeans turned it into a culture. The gospel came to America and the Americans turned it into a business. I don't know who said that, but I agree with him. The other thing that when it comes to church planting as evangelism is to try to do discipling from a decolonized perspective. Because as Tinker said, colonialism is Christianity and Christianity is colonialism. So helping people unlearn what they think church is another reason for so many people now reimagining what church can be. Because some people would say, is it church planting or is it just more colonialism? When it comes to diverse church planting, as you mentioned, I want to think about my spiritual father, Reverend Ray Rivera, who always says that most conversations in dominant society are white and Black. And we are thankful that our Black communities are included, but it seems like no one has noticed that we are in a multicolored kingdom and there are more colors in the crayon box that we want to be used and included. And then when people of color are invited to the spaces and places to have discussions, it's usually people that parrot what predominantly white spaces believe and teach. When it comes to church plants that are more evangelistic, I totally agree with that. Dozens of denominational studies have confirmed that the average new gains of in most church plants are about 60 to 80% from the ranks of people who haven't been attending or worshiping in any church over 10 or 15 years. So established congregations provide many things that newer church often cannot, but the younger ones, the church planters, are the ones that are kind of reimagining what church can be and reaching people that have either never had a church experience or have felt like church is not for them anymore, as you mentioned in your presentation, the Duns. I want to address also another key point that you mentioned about new models of holistic evangelism. And, holistic evangelism addresses the whole person, as many of the people here may know, spiritually, physically, emotionally. But over the years, a lot of the models that have emerged and have really been dynamic in our society have been looked down by some of the people that are training others. And some of them are lifted up. Some of the ones that I want to mention today are, you mentioned the digital evangelism. With the rise of technology, a lot of online platforms offer opportunities to share the gospel. And while the pandemic was going on, everyone was like, yes, we want to do this, we have to do this. But I don't know about you, but I've seen some people kind of run back to what was pre-pandemic services and still snubbing their noses at digital evangelism. And I say that we should be happy that there are new forms and models being introduced. Another thing is environmental stewardship. A lot of churches now, when they think about holistic, they're thinking about the importance of caring for creation. And some evangelistic efforts incorporate environmental initiatives and teaching the people that come, as we talked about discipleship, teaching the people that come to their churches about sustainable practices while sharing the gospel. Another thing that we've seen on the ground is business as mission and entrepreneurs establishing businesses in underserved areas, providing employment and economic growth while also sharing the gospel with employees and the community. And one of the things that we're seeing now is the diaspora ministry, reaching out to migrants and refugees and international students that are in our areas. Because as we have seen, we had a mentality of missionaries going out over there, but now there has come here. And so we need to continuously stretch our thinking and experiment and imagine how can we reach this new community that is here on our doorstep. And finally, from a Latina female perspective, I would like to add that, cultural sensitivity is really important. Again, in our church planting networks, we could see a little bit more of that, and not necessarily from the teaching aspect, because we always say various things when we're teaching, but I would like to see it in practice, understanding the unique cultural and spiritual needs of people of color, and addressing and recognizing the importance of the things that they find important and putting that high up on the radar, like family, tradition, and community. And of course, representation, being able to call more women into the spaces and not necessarily to have the typical roles that most people feel comfortable with inviting women to, but having them have key leadership positions. Another thing I would say is language and worship, the importance of bilingual services and incorporating elements of worship traditions to make the church more welcoming and inclusive, even if it means that some people might not necessarily feel as comfortable. And finally, community engagement, continuing to engage the broader community outside of the church, making the outside more important than what's happening on the inside, having more community events, festivals, and outreach opportunities. I think it's important because we have seen some dysfunctional planting narratives out there, and people have an idea of what the church is on the inside. So it would be great if those that are in spaces where they're training other church planters, or if you're a church planter and are looking for training, that you don't look at just who's going to give me the most money, but who is going to train me with a sense of purpose that is going to decolonize what we have thought is the way and the model. I believe that we can look at other things and say, you know what, triumphalism isn't the way. Looking at issues of gentrification and psychological issues in our community, all these things are important when we think about how we're training people, so that when they go out there, that they really do keep the main thing, and that is to share the gospel in new ways, and that it will be really good news and not just a lie. Thank you.